Hello everybody, it's been a while. I've been gardening, but I am now back to crafting. Well, by my inspiration picture, you can see I've got a challenge on my hands with this one. I have no idea how it's going to turn out. And I'm changing it, as I always tend to do, but in the inspiration pic, the birds they used were not a decoupage. They are a transfer that you rub on. I could have ordered the very same birds or some different ones in a transfer, but I had so many different bird rice paper, decoupage papers that I had ordered probably, I don't know, 2 years ago and have never used. So I thought, okay, I need to use some of these up. And it took me a while to figure out which one I wanted to use. And I ended up choosing this one, which I thought was really pretty. But I'm going to run into a couple of problems here. The size, right now I am cutting out the shape, the oval shape, but my board isn't all that wide, so you can see the birds don't totally fit. I really want, the majority of both birds in it, so I'm going to have to modify the paper even and scoot that right bird in a little bit more. At this point, it's time for me to decide my placement on the board. Kind of laying out the mold there because they will have corners from molds. Also, that candle thing that I'm holding at the bottom, that's going to be the base of what I'm going to be creating for the candle. So now I'm using a little white pencil to mark onto the board where the decoupage paper will go, because I am going to have to paint white behind that so that it will show up the best. As I've said, I always do things a little differently than whatever inspiration pick I might have found. And in this case, since I'm using decoupage paper and not a transfer, I wanted to try to add some two-dimensional effects to the decoupage paper. And in order to do this, I've put another piece of kind of like tracing paper, just, tissue paper, on top of my picture here. And I'm lightly tracing where I think I would need to add some clay to build up those areas. Before I do that though, I do need to paint the background with white. And because, you have to have a white background for decoupaging paper on. The next step though is I'm actually going to decoupage first that tissue paper where I have my light drawing of the birds and branches and leaves. The medium that I will be using to try to get this effect is Iron Orchid Designs Air Dry Clay. After this project is complete, I'll have to decide whether this step here was really necessary. I am using Paint Couture embossing medium, and I'm troweling it on really kind of sporadically over the whole board. One of the reasons I wanted to do this was because I wanted to carry it into parts of the circle, so I had some additional texture. But I end up painting in the black areas, I end up painting over that so that I kind of have a clean slate. You'll see as we go along. The decoupage paper dried very nicely over the texture that I had applied underneath it. You can't see the texture all that well right now, but after I do some antiquing and things to it, it will show up much better. But I really don't have any wrinkles per se, other than, you know, where it's over the plaster that I have underneath. But before I move forward with the next steps, I am going to apply some varnish to this paper, and I'm going to use the heavy duty wood varnish made by Polyvine, and what I have is clear dead flat, which is what I want right now. So I'm just going to pour a little out. This clear dead flat dries really quickly, and so I'll be able to move on to the next steps. And in the next steps, I'm going to show you several different, well, 3 different Crackle products from Pentart. One of them is new to me. The other 2 are not. I've used them before in several projects and in several videos, but at least all on this board, you'll be able to see the difference in the 3. While this is drying, I am going to do something on the black area. If I had it to do over, I don't know that I would have necessarily added the paint Couture texture embossing paste. It's not very thick, and I'm sure it will give a little bit of texture where it's a little thicker. But with the next Crackle mediums that I'm going to be applying, I would be limited to applying it only in the black areas, and I kind of want to have a clean slate. So I am going to paint over all those areas where I've applied the Couture. And this is just black gesso. If we look at the picture, again, the inspiration picture, you see there's a lot of texture. Just kind of some built up, smoother type texture, and then a lot of gritty looking texture. But you really don't see any crackle anywhere. So that is something that I am adding to my piece. Now, another thing that you may observe is that here and there, the background color, black, has little, shows through, like paint missed that or paint chipped off of that. And after studying that, I'm kind of wondering if there's a possibility, this may be so glued down, I'm wondering if there's a possibility that I could create some little tears in the paper. Of course, I then have to kind of scrape to get down to the black paint, or just paint black. But hey, if we don't like it, I can use texture or something to cover it up. So I'm going to see what happens here. Oh wow, that is stuck on there. Now let's talk Crackle. I'm going to be putting my texture products on last. So I'm going to do my Crackle next. This Pentart is a one component. It's a Crackle medium. You can brush or sponge brush on where you want this. It is used to crack paint, the top layer of paint. So you want it sandwiched in between two layers of paint, usually something dark in the background like black, and then a lighter colored paint over the Crackle medium. There are places where I want to use paint without any texture medium in it. So this will be applied in different areas on the black, and I think I'm also going to apply just a little bit in here, and hopefully if I can use a really thin watered down paint, we might get some cracks, but I kind of want to have the color I'm going to be using, colors I'm going to be using out here to kind of blend a little bit on the edges interior. So I'm going to go ahead and open this one up first. You want to use a soft, dry brush. And then we're just going to brush on the medium where we want it. The main color of the board over the black will consist of about 3 colors that are blended together. The lightest color is a really good match to the paper, and that is Dixie Belle's drop cloth. And then I have Heritage Traditions all-in-one paint in Irish Garden, which is a bluish color. And then I mixed some of that Irish Garden with just some mossy green acrylic paint to get me a green with a hint of blue in it. My plan is, where the Crackle medium is on the paper, is to begin with the drop cloth and then slowly blend in some additional colors with the green and the blue. One key with Pentart products is the second component. In this case, the second component is paint. And in the other two Crackles you'll see, one is going to be a paste and one is just going to be a varnish looking thing that is called component 2. But anyway, point is, with all the component 2s, the key to getting better cracking is to apply heat. That's what I'm doing here using my heat gun. Now, because I didn't put on the Crackle medium very thickly or the paint very thickly, the crackle that I'm getting is pretty fine line, but I think it looks pretty cool. This is the next Pentart cracking system that I haven't used before. And what it is a primer. It's a two-part, two-component, a primer, and then after that dries, you use a cracking paste. It's quite thick. I don't want any thickness on my paper, so this is going to be just on this outside area in spots. Not covering it completely because we still have to do texture in just paint to finish up the entire board in the other areas. So this is just going to be in the black, some of the black areas. Now, when you put on the primer, I am told that just like the other primer that I use all the time for fine line, you don't want to go over and over this. You also need a dry brush. Okay. So wherever you put it on, you want a nice even thin coat, but again, you don't want it to go over and over it. Thinking about this being thick with the paste, I'm going to stay more toward the perimeter edges than like center areas up close to this. It goes on milky, but it dries clear. Now while we're waiting on this, the last crackle I'm going to use is the two-part fine line crackle that I have used so many times. And this is where I'm going to put it on the paper. Not everywhere, just in a few places. Again, this goes on milky and will dry shiny clear and sticky, a little sticky. This is component 1. Same process. You want to keep it smooth. Primers are dry now. I'm going to start with the center. I don't want to put the pasty stuff on first because I'll probably get my arms and hands in it. So this is component 2, fine line crackle. It's going over the paper where I placed the primer. The more paste you put on, the thicker the cracks. And of course, the thinner you put it on, the thinner the cracks. And again, heat is the magic to both the paste and the fine line crackle component too. So using my heat gun and keeping it moving, I will force the cracks. The heat's gonna give me more cracks. I played around with my 3 paint colors to kind of in the bottom right hand corner to see if I was going to like that blending, which I do very much. Now all of this will end up being aged at the very end, but I really like the color choices that I have going here. I think it goes well with the paper. So now what I'm doing is just taking those 3 colors and painting over the rest of the crackle paste areas, blending as I go. That first dip of my brush was in the blue color, the Irish Garden from Heritage Traditions paint, and then my mix there of that blue plus some Mossy Meadow that was just folk art. And then I'm adding in a little bit, pouncing in a little bit of the drop cloth, and I will be blending that together here and there. And then the last thing I did, because it wasn't quite green enough, is I just used the straight Mossy Meadow and kind of dry brushed little spots here and there over each little section. This is the last step here to finish up the background board over the black areas and over little edges of the paper. So it's time to finish with my textured paint. So what I'm doing here is I'm just spooning out 2 little puddles of each of the 3 colors of the paint. And in one, I want to add something that will be very gritty. And so what I'm going to use is sand. We keep a pile of contractor sand because we use it in the bottom of our chicken coop, on the floor of the chicken coop. But because it's contractor sand, there are some larger particles. So I did sift this sand to get the particles and maybe any little twigs that might have been in it. Now for the other little puddle of paint, I want something that will be thick and end up looking a little crusty. And so for that, I always go to salt wash. Now I will say that if you don't have salt wash or if you don't have sand, you can use baking soda, but it will look more like the sandy gritty stuff. It really won't look a whole lot like what salt wash is, because salt wash really thickens the paint. To apply my textures, I will begin with the salt wash and using a spatula to apply it. I'll use the spatula for the other texture too, because I can get a nice drag and that grit just really spreads out. I kind of work in top half and bottom half and use brushes and different things, even my finger, to do a little blending. In the last little clip, you saw me use drop cloth, watered down, and then a spray bottle to make it run, tipping up the board pretty much not 100% over the outside perimeter of the paper, but the point of it was to give it a cohesive look so it didn't look blotchy. Now, before I'm going to finish up with the waxes, I need to add some writing. That's what was on the original picture, inspiration picture, which I liked. So I'm using IOD's Kindest Regards stamp and IOD's Black Ink to add just a little bit of writing at the top and at the bottom. You want to make sure you hold on to that stencil. Don't scoot it. Otherwise you get blurry images, but honestly, it's a very faded look on this anyway because it's so textured. After that, I'm going to be applying Pentart's Antique Paste in the papered area, and then clear waxing, and then dark waxing the perimeter. And then we're not far from through with the actual board, but I am going to show you the molds that go on the board, and then part 2 will be the candle creation. Hopefully there will be a part 2 and I can make the candle happen. I need to pause here to explain a very important step that I did not film. Whenever you're using Pentart's Fine Line Crackle, it is a glossy finish. That product is a solvent-based product, and it is recommended that you top coat it, and if you do, you have to use a solvent-based sealer. Well, if you remember, I did not put the Crackle over all of the paper. It's only in parts, so parts look shiny and parts look flat. To solve that, I don't want it shiny. I am using Rustoleum's Clear Matte Spray Sealer, and I did that over the whole board twice, including the texture and all of that. And then I still could see a little sheen, so it took 2 more light coats, letting them dry in between on the paper part until I got a matte finish over the whole thing.
I burned out like a wandering ember. I shone bright, then my journey was over. What I sought when I ran was back where I began. No matter the rain, no matter the storm, I'm coming home. I'm coming home. Leave open the gate, don't turn off the light, I'm coming home. Well, I scratched in the dirt for a while. I gained all that I knew for a price. In the end, what I found was nowhere near as nice. No matter the rain, no matter the storm, I'm coming home. I'm coming home. Leave open the gate, don't turn off the light, I'm coming home. Though I fought with my claws and teeth, though I elbowed my way to a seat, there be no kind of peace like you beside me. No matter the rain, no matter the storm, I'm coming home. I'm coming home. Leave open the gate, don't turn off the light. I'm coming home. I'm coming home. Nothing's as it seems in the photo. Nothing is as sweet going solo. Nowhere I can ramble or roam. Could change my mind, could slow my coming home. I'm coming home. Oh, I'm coming home. Leave open the gate, don't turn off the light. I'm coming home. I'm coming home.
Well, I'm now at the final steps of adding a variety of different antiquing products. I'll go through them and show you what I use. This first one I wasn't really thrilled about. I've never used it before. It's Art Alchemy's matte wax in rusty brown. It just doesn't look rusty brown to me. It almost looks purplish. But once I had started applying it, I thought, okay, well, I'll just go ahead and put it on, hit and miss here and there. I end up kind of going over some of those spots with the next go-to product that I always like to use when I want to make something look rusty. Simple to do. To give the molds a little bit more punch, I went to my go-to, Dixie Belle's gold gilding paste, but I used a very light hand. I just wanted to hit a few of the high points on all of the molds. The simplest rust technique that I have found to do is just to use some sort of top coat, or you can use Mod Podge as your adhesive, and then sprinkle on cinnamon. Now I have a mixture of ground cinnamon, ground nutmeg, ground cloves, and a little bit of ground turmeric. It just gives, I think, a little bit of variety of shades that you'd find in rust. After you sprinkle it on, you let it sit for a couple of minutes and then tap it off. Use a fan brush or some other light brush to gently sweep away the rest of the loose powder, and really it kind of sweeps some of it away on the glue spots, but I don't mind that because it just gives a more varied look. After that dries, then I go over it again with more top coat, and in this case I'm using the Polyvine Dead Flat Varnish, and I will do that here and there all over the board. Then, to darken some of these rusty areas, I am using Pentart's Antique Paste and just lightly going over that, then using a baby wipe to wipe a little back. I don't do it on every single rust spot, it's just kind of here and there. And the very last product that I am using is Stamperia's Antique Paste to go around the edges, to go around some of the molds, and again using a baby wipe to kind of brush and rub that in. I would like a vote from you guys. What do you think? Should I do part 2 and do the candle? Let me know in a comment below the video. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you really will enjoy the final pictures of this board.